Hello, listeners. This is Kat, and welcome back to Put Your Hands Up Podfics. This will be the continuation of Always Chasing After Something. This will be part 16, the second half to chapter 9. Izuku respectfully declined to participate in the test of courage. But it's going to be so much fun, Uraraka pleaded. They were all gathered in the clearing, Aries' hand in his, while they learned exactly what this test was. He stared at her. Walking through the woods to be jump-scared is not my idea of a good time, he stated. Also, my reflexes are permanently fight mode, and I will stab first, ask questions later. And when he stabbed, he aimed to kill. He really didn't want to be responsible for a student's death. Uraraka's smile grew a little tight and strained. Right. You could be a scarer. I'm just going to sit this one out with Eri, Izuku said. We'll see you at the lodge. If you're sure, Uraraka said, face falling. We'll miss you, though. He kind of doubted that. I'm sure. Have fun. He waved and turned towards the lodge, nearly sidestepping Bakugo, who'd been lurking behind him. Oi, you could at least hang out here while we're doing this, Bakugo said. No thanks, Izuku said. I'll see you later. Eri squeezed his hand and smiled up at him. Can we watch TV? Sure, Izuku said. He'd never had one in the apartment. They'd watch stuff on his laptop sometimes, but he often needed it for his cases. But she'd found a show here that she was quickly becoming obsessed with. Something about glittery princess heroes? He didn't know. He never paid attention. It kept her occupied. That was what mattered. They trekked back to the lodge, Eri explaining the last episode she'd watched and what she thought would happen next. He half listened, responding with the appropriate gasps as necessary. Walking through the doors, he paused and glanced back at the trees. Izu? Eri asked. Sorry, Izuku said. Thought I saw something. The hairs on the back of his neck stood up. He didn't exactly feel like he was being watched, but he did have a strong sense of foreboding. Something was going to happen. He didn't know what. Just something. He led Eri to the lounge and set up the TV. And then he dashed to their room and strapped on a few more knives just in case. Eri noticed the extra knives as soon as he came back and frowned, scooting closer to him on the couch as soon as he sat down. He double-checked that she had her knife and gave her a second one, too. This might be all in his head. The students might come back and laugh at him sitting here watching TV with 9 knives, but he wasn't about to be caught off guard. Never again. They made it through a single episode of her Glitter Star Princess show when Mandalay's voice invaded their minds. Everyone! 2 villains attacked us. It's possible there are more coming. Izuku leaped up, turning off the TV and shutting off the lights. A quick peek out the hallway showed no one was prowling the halls, and he went to the windows to look outside. The tops of the trees glowed blue, thick black smoke covering the night sky. A forest fire. Return to camp immediately. We're regrouping. Do not engage any enemies. Izuku frowned. What a dumb order. What were the students supposed to do if they were attacked first? Izu? Eri called in a shaky voice. He picked her up off the couch and ran out of the room. It's going to be okay. He needed to find Aizawa and figure out what was going on. Why would villains attack here? What were they hoping to gain? He passed the man running out the front doors. Get to the classroom with Vlad and the others, Aizawa yelled. What's happening? Izuku asked. The door shut before Aizawa could answer, and then a burst of blue flames lit up the window. Eri gasped and clutched Izuku's shirt. His feet shuffled, unsure of what to do. Protect Eri and find the others, or help Aizawa. There were voices outside and another blaze of fire. He set Eri down. "Remember where the classroom is?" he asked. Eri nodded. "I need you to run there, okay? I'm going to make sure Aizawa is okay. Keep your knife ready, and remember, stab first, ask questions later." "Stab first, questions later," she repeated. He ruffled her head and pushed her down the hall, then sprinted for the main doors. A quick peek outside showed the fight had moved away from the doors at least, and Aizawa had the intruder pinned on the ground. Izuku quietly slipped out the door. Aizawa was trying to pry information from the villain. Izuku could help with that. He was good at getting information. Some students had already made it back to the lodge and were crashing through the trees, making just enough of a distraction that the guy under Aizawa was able to wriggle back up to his feet. Izuku got a look at his face and felt like he'd been punched in the gut. Dabi. He'd been not quite friends with the man, but Dabi had helped him after he first escaped the lab, taught him about the underground world and the secret clinics Izuku could go to, where people wouldn't ask questions. In many ways, Dabi was the only reason Izuku was still alive today. But if he was here to hurt people Izuku was starting to care about, then he was an enemy, and Izuku would strike without hesitation. Before he could throw a knife, Aizawa's capture scarf wrapped around him and tightened, and the man melted into a mud pile. Izuku's jaw dropped. Not a lot surprised him anymore, but that had been truly unexpected. Since when could Dabi do that? Did he have a second quirk? "Great," Aizawa muttered. He glanced at the students and then at Izuku. "Inside, all of you." Izuku obeyed, only so he could check on Eri and make sure she'd reached the classroom without incident. The students went first, and Aizawa pulled Izuku back for a moment. "Did you know about this attack?" he demanded. "Why would I know about it?" Izuku asked, slightly offended. And impressed. He'd had no contact with anyone outside of Aizawa and UA for several days. How did Aizawa think he could have learned about it? "Your behavior last night, and your general hobbies," Aizawa explained. "You think I would have kept Eri anywhere near a target for an attack like this?" Izuku demanded. Aizawa took a deep breath. "Right. Had to check." Fair. Izuku wasn't aligned with the heroes, even if he was currently cooperating with them. It made sense to question him. They raced back to the classroom, Eri huddled next to Mina, holding her knife tightly. Face scared, but set in determination. The other students there were spread out around the room, except for Kirishima, who was arguing with Vlad. "Sir, please. I'm the only one who knows where Kota goes. You have to let me go get him." Izuku's stomach dropped like a stone. Kota. There were an unknown number of villains out there. If the students weren't allowed to engage, that left 4 heroes, none of whom knew where Kota even was. Would they be able to spare the time to look for him? "I can't allow a student out there in an attack," Vlad argued. You know what? All these stupid rules about students and illegal quirk use were bullshit, Izuku decided. He strode over to Eri and knelt down next to her. "You okay?" he asked. She nodded. "Are you gonna help Kota?" "I am. I want you to stay here, okay?" he said. "We'll look after her," Mina promised. Izuku nodded his thanks. "If anyone hurts her, none of you will live long enough to be pros. Got it?" Mina gulped and offered a shaky smile. Izuku turned back to Eri, squeezing her hand around the knife. "Stab first. Questions later." She repeated it back to him. Mina mouthed, "What the fuck?" Izuku ignored her and went over to Kirishima, who had been pushed aside so Vlad and Aizawa could discuss battle plans. He put a hand on Kirishima's shoulder and snapped. The room went silent, all the other chatter stopping mid-word. "Whoa, what happened?" Kirishima asked. "My quirk," Izuku said. "Come on, we're going to get Kota." "But the teachers—" "There's a kid out there who needs our help. You want to waste more time arguing?" He shook his head. "Let's go." They sprinted out of the room. Izuku's quirk wore off around the front door, but by the time Aizawa realized he was gone and came after him, he and Kirishima would be lost in the trees. Aizawa wouldn't be able to justify chasing after them when he had other students to worry about. "What's your quirk called, by the way?" Kirishima asked. "It doesn't have a name," Izuku said. "What? I didn't think that was possible," he said. Outside, he took the lead and aimed for the narrow path he'd emerged from the night before. They used their phones as flashlights. It'd alert any villains sneaking around to their presence, but it was better than twisting an ankle on an unseen tree root. They needed to prioritize speed. "It's complicated," Izuku said. "Now's really not the time." "Yeah, I guess not," Kirishima agreed. They mostly ran in silence, sprinting up the narrow path. It inclined sharply, and Izuku hoped that meant they were getting closer. A child screamed. "Kota!" Kirishima yelled. They ran faster. Izuku readied his fingers, and as soon as he saw Kota and the large villain towering over him, he snapped. Kota's hat had been knocked off, and the kid had been punched around quite a bit. His arm was bent at an awkward angle, and blood trailed down his face, mixing with tears and snot. The villain's eye glowed with pleasure, a maniacal grin splitting his face. Ugh, this was the kind of asshole that enjoyed hurting kids. Izuku might push him off the cliff. If he even could. This villain is massive. Probably weighed 300 pounds in pure muscle. What the hell? Fine. He'd just stab him a bunch. He carefully gathered Kota in his arms, feeling broken ribs too, and stepped back behind Kirishima again before deactivating his quirk. "Good," the villain finished screaming, pounding his fist into the rocks. "Huh?" Kirishima skidded to a stop, glancing behind him at Izuku. Kota sobbed in Izuku's arms, his good hand clutching his shirt. "Well, looky here," the villain said. "A couple more brats want to play. Hope you're more of a challenge than that one." "You bet we are," Kirishima said, taking a defensive stance and hardening his arms. "Kirishima, take Kota," Izuku ordered. "No way, man. I'm the hero in training. I'll handle this." "Yeah, in training," Izuku repeated. "I've got this," Kirishima promised. "Big talk," the villain said, flexing his fist. "Let's see if you can deliver." He threw a right hook, slamming his fist into Kirishima's arms. Kirishima grunted and slid back 3 feet. He had to shake out his arms. "Don't," Kota whispered. "Just run. He'll kill you." "Not if I kill him first," Izuku promised. "Whoa, man. We can't kill him. We're the good guys," Kirishima said. "You couldn't kill me even if you wanted to," the villain yelled, rushing Kirishima again. Kirishima blocked once more, and the force of the punch sent him hurtling into the rock wall. "No!" Kota yelled. Kirishima staggered but managed to stay on his feet. Izuku snapped his fingers. "Dumbass heroes," he muttered. He walked over to Kirishima, placed the tip of his foot against Kirishima's knee, and snapped his fingers twice more in quick succession, deactivating his quirk and reactivating it. Only this time, Kirishima wasn't frozen with the villain. "I can do this all day," Kirishima said, then blinked and realized the villain wasn't moving. "No, you can't," Izuku stated. "Take Kota." "I told you, I'm the hero in training. This is my job." "What are you going to do to him?" Izuku demanded. "You going to keep standing there as his punching bag?" Kirishima frowned. "Harsh, man." "Well, sorry if we don't have time for tact," Izuku snapped. "I'll deal with this guy and learn what I can about the attack. You get Kota to safety. He needs medical attention." He pushed Kota into Kirishima's arms despite the other's protest. "Wait, Izuku, you're not actually going to kill him, are you? Because if you are, I can't let you." Izuku tilted his head back at the sky. "Here's the thing, Kirishima. I'm not one of the good guys." "You're not a villain either," Kirishima stated. "You don't know anything about me." "I know how much you care about Eri, and a real villain wouldn't be helping hero students the way you did today." "This won't be my first kill, Kirishima. Probably won't be the last either. You should get Kota out of here." God knows the kid didn't need to see him murder a man. "Look, I'm not going to pretend I know what your life is like or what's happened to you," Kirishima said. "But I know you're better than this. You're strong enough. You don't have to kill him." "What's the other option, huh?" Izuku demanded. "You have rope in your pockets? Some kind of teleportation button to zap him right into a jail cell? If I don't kill him, he's going to keep coming after us." Kirishima leveled him with a look. "You don't have to kill him." Izuku ground his teeth together. They did not have time for a morality debate. He needed to find out how many villains there were and why they were here. Time may be frozen on their little cliffside, but it very much wasn't for the rest of the camp. "I'm glad you live in a world where your morality gets to rule your decisions, but that's not my fucking life," Izuku stated. "Now get Kota out of here, before this gets messy." He flicked a knife into each hand and approached the villain. "Izuku, don't!" Kirishima said. "I'm not telling you again, Kirishima." "There's another way," Kirishima insisted. "We can lead him back to camp and get help. Aizawa-sensei would be able to beat him." "Aizawa and the others are busy with the other villains," Izuku argued. He stabbed the villain in the abdomen and made some deep cuts on his shoulders. Nothing lethal, just a few injuries to slow him down. While his quirk was active, the wounds didn't bleed. All he'd done so far was make the holes. Once he snapped his fingers again, the wounds would behave like normal. "Izuku!" Kirishima yelled. He glared at the student. "I'm not one of the good guys," he repeated. "You need to leave before I deactivate my quirk. Get Kota to safety." Kirishima's jaw tensed. He made no move to head back down the mountain. Fine. Scar the kid for life, see if he cared. Izuku snapped his fingers. "Ha!" the villain yelled. His face twisted in pain and confusion, and he reached a hand to his steadily bleeding stomach. "What the?" Izuku twirled his knife. "You'll be fighting me now. I'm not as merciful as him." The villain grinned. Fleshy tendons popped out of his body, covering the wounds. "Things are getting interesting. Let me properly introduce myself. I go by Muscular." Izuku recognized the name. S-class villain with several hero kills under his belt. Nothing he couldn't handle. "You can call me Ghost." Sharing his identity with a villain wasn't one of Izuku's preferred strategies, but Muscular wasn't leaving this mountain alive, no matter what Kirishima protested. It didn't matter if Muscular knew what his face looked like. He'd never have the chance to tell anyone. Muscular paused, looking him up and down. "I've heard of you. I had no idea you were such a scrawny kid." "Don't let that fool you," he snapped, sliced through the muscles covering the villain's body, and stepped back again. "My reputation is well earned." Grimacing, Muscular shook out his arms. "I'm going to enjoy ripping you apart." "You'll never lay a hand on me," Izuku promised. "Tough talk from someone fighting with a toothpick." Muscular grinned. He rushed forward. Kota and Kirishima screamed behind him. Rolling his eyes, he snapped and froze Muscular in place, turning a glare back at them. "Why are you two still here?" "I can't just leave you here," Kirishima said. "Kota needs medical attention. Go!" Plus, he may or may not need to torture information out of Muscular. He'd rather not subject either of them to that. Izuku slashed at Muscular again, trying to illustrate his point to Kirishima. This was not going to be pretty. Kirishima still wouldn't move. Izuku snapped, and Muscular lunged right into the dirt. It took him a second to get back on his feet, sudden pain making him stagger a bit. "Oh, I'm going to enjoy beating you bloody," Muscular said. "Would you just surrender? I'm bored," Izuku taunted. Muscular growled and tried to grab Izuku, more tendons springing out of his skin to cover the new wounds. The ones Izuku had sliced flailed on top of the new muscles, sending blood everywhere. This was going to take too long if he could apply pressure to his wounds and keep fighting this easily. "Kirishima, if you don't want Kota to have nightmares of what I'm about to do, I suggest you leave." Because the only spot on this villain's body not constantly covered in new muscles, his head. Izuku could do a lot of damage to the man's face without killing him. "This isn't cool, man," Kirishima said, refusing to leave. "Kids' nightmares are on you," Izuku retorted. "You're awfully cocky," Muscular yelled, punching down into the ground. Izuku jumped back and snapped again, freezing him in a crouch, his hand buried in the rocks. His range also extended to include Kirishima and Kota. Neither of them needed to see this. The aftermath would be bad enough. First, he dug out the prosthetic eye and smashed it under his heel. Then he made a thin cut across Muscular's neck, just to prove that he could kill the man, and there'd be nothing he could do about it. He backed up and snapped his fingers again. Muscular staggered, slamming a hand over his missing eye. "You brat! You'll pay for that!" "Your other eye is next, if you don't answer my questions," Izuku said. "And if you refuse to cooperate, then I have no use for you and I'll slit your throat and be done with it." "Oh, geez," Kirishima said, finally backing up down the path. "I'm not telling you anything," Muscular said. "But maybe you could answer a question for me before I kill you." Izuku raised a brow. "Go on." He could learn something this way, too. Muscular grinned. "Do you know where I can find a kid named Bakugo?" Bakugo? Why was he looking for Bakugo? Is that why all the villains were here? "In the woods somewhere," Izuku shrugged. "Is he the only target tonight?" "Looks like you don't know anything. That means playtime." Muscular surged forward. Sighing, Izuku snapped again. Talk about all brawn, no brain. Well, he'd made a threat to take the other eye. Time to make good on it and prove he was serious. He reversed his grip and stabbed his knife into Muscular's eye, careful not to go too deep and hit his brain. With a twist and a sickening squelch, the eye popped out. He flicked it off the knife without looking at it. When he snapped his fingers, Muscular howled. Blood flowed out of the empty socket, running rivers down his face and over his fingers. "You motherfucker! I'll rip you limb from limb with my bare teeth!" "Only if you can find me," Izuku said, quietly circling around Muscular. Muscular stumbled around, throwing wild punches into the cliffside. Kirishima and Kota were out of sight, far enough down the mountain path that Izuku wasn't concerned about them. "Now, tell me what the villains are planning, or I'll cut off your hands next." Izuku switched out one of his knives, for the one hidden in his boot, because the one in his boot had a serrated edge he'd need to cut through bone. "Like hell, you fucker!" Muscular swung behind him, missing Izuku by several feet. "Why are you after Bakugo?" Izuku pressed. He'd prefer answers over continuously maiming this man, but if Muscular didn't cooperate, he'd have no choice. Muscular roared and slammed both hands on the ground. The impact was so strong it sent a shower of rocks and dirt into the air, destabilizing the ground in a solid 3-foot radius. Izuku shook dirt out of his hair. "Say goodbye to your hand," he snapped. It took him a few minutes to cut through the muscles and sever the joints, but once he was through the bone, his knife sliced through the second half like warm butter. He tossed the limb over the cliff edge, just in case Muscular's quirk allowed him to reattach it somehow. He snapped again. Muscular crashed to his knees, screaming in pain. Tendons wiggled over the stump like tentacles. "Have you figured it out yet?" Izuku asked. "I don't have a scratch on me, and I've taken your hand and your eye. What else do you think I'll do?" "I don't know what they want with the kid," Muscular shouted. "I didn't ask." Now they were getting somewhere. "Is Bakugo the only target?" Izuku asked. "No. One of the others was supposed to get blood for at least 3 people for her quirk." An odd goal, but Izuku would focus on that later. "How many of you are there?" 7, I think. I don't know. I didn't count. Fuck, who are you?" 7 villains, counting Muscular and Dabi, and the 2 that attacked Mandalay. That only accounted for 4. Where were the other 3? "Are you working alone, or did someone hire you?" Izuku asked. "We're the Vanguard Action Squad for the League of Villains," Muscular said. "Please, that's all I know, I swear." The goddamn League. Izuku should have known. At least Tomura didn't know he was here, otherwise he'd have been part of the villains' objectives, one way or the other. "I believe you," Izuku said. "But I still can't let you live." He took no pleasure in creeping forward and slitting the man's throat. All the extra muscles from his quirk retreated back into the skin, leaving a jacked man choking on his own blood in the dirt. Izuku waited until he went still, waited to make sure that when he left, this villain wouldn't follow them. He descended the mountain with a forced calm. They were in a crisis. Emotions could wait. Things like regret or horror would only slow him down. He'd done what needed to be done. Now he needed to move on to the next thing. Kirishima and Kota waited for him at the base of the mountain. Kota had his eyes shut tight, breathing carefully through his nose. Kirishima glared at Izuku, looking him up and down. "It didn't have to be that way," Kirishima said. "You'll understand why I did it one day," Izuku responded. "Come on. We need to get Kota back to the lodge and check on the others, and I need to find Mandalay." Kirishima fell into step behind him. "Did you at least find out why they're here?" "It's the League," Izuku said. Muscular said they were looking for Bakugo, though what they want with him I have no idea." "Bakugo?" Kirishima repeated. "We have to find him and warn him." "The forest is too big," Izuku argued. "And our priority needs to be the injured kid in your arms. Bakugo's a big boy, he can handle himself." He had no doubt Bakugo would ignore the "don't engage" order if his life was on the line, and his versatile quirk gave him a better chance than most at protecting himself. "I know that, but I feel so useless." "Kota is alive right now because of you," Izuku said. "That's not useless to me." Kirishima had nothing to say to that. They ran into Aizawa before reaching the lodge. "Sensei!" Kirishima cried. "You two are in so much trouble," Aizawa said. "We found Kota being attacked by a villain," Izuku reported. "Kota needs medical attention." "And the villain?" he asked, stepping closer to Kirishima to examine the kid. "No longer a problem," Izuku stated. Kirishima's jaw tightened. "Izuku took care of him, sir." Aizawa paused, glancing between the two of them, and wisely decided now wasn't the time. "Get back to the lodge. I'm going to help Mandalay." "Tell her to warn everyone that Bakugo is the target," Izuku told him. Aizawa glanced at him in surprise. "Bakugo? Why Bakugo?" "Don't know. Don't care to find out either." "Agreed," Aizawa said. "Go. I'll take care of it." Nodding, the two continued back to the lodge in silence. That was fine with Izuku. It gave him time to plan out his next move. Tracking all the villains down one by one was a waste of time. The forest was too huge for that, and the villains had been here too long already. But they had to have some way to leave once they captured Bakugo. Knowing there was a warp quirk on their side made their getaway obvious. Izuku just needed to find where they planned to meet up and make their escape. Easier said than done. He could search the woods all night and never find it. It was a shame he couldn't extend the range of his quirk to cover the whole woods. Then this would have been a cakewalk. That kind of distance was beyond him. And even if he pushed his quirk to the limits of his range, he could only maintain about 200 meters for a minute before getting a gushing nosebleed and a crippling migraine. If he could just find one villain, though, he could follow them back to their rendezvous point. "Attention all students! The villains are targeting Bakugo. Repeat, the villains are targeting Bakugo. Bakugo, you're advised to return to the lodge immediately." "I guess Aizawa found Mandalay," Kirishima said. "One more thing. By order of Pro Hero Eraserhead, you're authorized to use your quirks for combat. Defend yourselves." Izuku still didn't understand why students wouldn't do that anyway. It made no sense not to use their quirk if a villain was trying to hurt them. They'd be needlessly handicapping themselves. Heroes were weird. They made it to the lodge, racing through the doors and back to the classroom they'd left everyone in. New scorch marks marred the walls, and Izuku wanted to scream. A villain had gotten this far into the lodge? What the hell? Everyone was all right, though, including Eri. She kept a death grip on her knife tucked into Ashido's side, and visibly brightened when Izuku came back. Vlad took Kota from Kirishima, the latter shaking out his arms. "Ida, get me some blankets and pillows from the lounge. Minetta, ice and the first aid kit from the kitchen." Both students obeyed without question, running out of the room. "What's going on out there?" Kaminari asked. "We didn't see much, only rescued Kota," Izuku said. He hugged Eri and rubbed the top of her head. "I'm heading back out there. Okay, Eri?" "Are you gonna save Bakugo too?" she asked. "I'm going to try," Izuku said. "I want to come," Ashido said. "Nope, no," Not a chance in hell. Not after he spent so much time arguing with Kirishima about their morals. I'm going alone. His voice left no room for argument. You're staying here, Vlad stated. Izuku didn't bother to respond as he snapped his fingers and slipped out the door. This whole evening was proof he didn't belong with people like them. Good people. Heroes. He'd never be like that. There was too much blood on his hands. All right, listeners. This concludes the second half to Chapter 9 of Always Chasing After Something. Chapter 10 will be up next. I would love to hear any thoughts and reactions you all are having to this fic so far, and how the author is putting together the summer training camp arc. I'd love to hear what you're thinking, because definitely a spin on it. The fact that Kirishima is one of the ones that knows where Kota's secret hideout is, and that he's there the whole time that Izuku's engaging with Muscular. So drop those comments below for me, and as always, thank you all so much for listening.